Pentecostal setting at the age of about 19 years old. Went into the church and just had a desire to want to see if I could get to know the Supreme Being. And
Sure.
Of course, you know, that's just what you would do. But as I know now that it was God that was working in me to pursue that avenue, that venue. And at 19, I went there and I went to the Pentecostal world and learned a lot as far as the scriptures are concerned. And now I look at it and see just some of the things that now I screech at, and I think about the understanding of what was brought along to me, that we kind of made it, as we call it, religious, and then we also made it hocus pocus and the holiness Pentecostal type teaching. So it is wonderful to be freed from that way now, and just understanding the scriptures from what we're sharing here today.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I wanted to just express is to you, what do we think about the gathering that we're having here? And it's different from the venue of being in the churches. So in that respect, I wanted to ask you, or maybe just point it out to you, that how you feeling with the idea that you have separated from the Christendom and being pointed to the churches on Sundays, and that everything now is pointed and based off of your idea and personage that it's got to be Sunday, that you have to go, do. And with that liberty of what you're understanding the scriptures now, how are you feeling about that?
I'm feeling good.
You feeling good?
I feel great.
Indeed.
I feel great.
Indeed. How about the idea of some of us that may have just come this way? Now you may not be really sure on the venue that you have gotten away from that.
Mm-hmm.
Are you really sure-footed in the venue that you've left that and come over to understanding the scriptures to what we're sharing today? Well, I wanted to bring to you today the understanding of why you should see it scripturally, that you should not be involved in that way anymore.
All right.
So, if we could, we got the book of Ezekiel here. Now, let's understand something, that in Israel, there was the 12 tribes of Israel, which were all united under King David.
All right.
And then after King David, his son built the temple, and then God said because of his misdoings that he was going to separate the unitedness of the 12 tribes. So it become the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. Mm-hmm. So now we've seen the split happen after Solomon died. So now we got to understand why we have the book of Ezekiel and the book of Isaiah. Ezekiel was prophesying to the northern kingdom.
All right.
The southern kingdom. And Isaiah was prophesying around the time, at the same time as Ezekiel, to the southern kingdom. Isaiah was prophesying to the northern kingdom. Of course, in the northern kingdom, 10 tribes. In the southern kingdom, 2 tribes, or to 3 tribes. But you understand, Ezekiel was prophesying to the southern kingdom, and what he wanted to bring forth is the idea that you need to understand something from the standpoint of God and what God had his disappointment with the tribes that was in the southern kingdom. So what we're talking about here is, now in Jerusalem you had Judah and you had the other tribe, I can't think of the name of it right now, but we had Judah there, and Judah is the king tribe, the royalty tribe. Well, they were supposed to be bringing the information over from the Jerusalem, from the temple. So what we find out here is that Ezekiel is now the Son of Man. He's brought forth, and he's getting the message from God to take a look at some of the things that the Israelites were doing in the temple.
All right.
And as you find out that what they were doing in the temple, they were doing idolatry. And when they were performing idolatry, God said to Ezekiel that I want you to take a look at this and consider this. And I also want you to help them understand as to what they're doing in my house. So the temple was God's house.
Yep.
And God is saying that the people who I gave my house to build for me to come down and worship with them, they were defaming it. So you have to understand their premises of what was going on there. So now that we understand their premise, now we know that Ezekiel was given the vision. And the vision is that Ezekiel saw was that he saw the cherubim, the chariots, which carried the mercy seat. I love it when I usually have my prompter because I have some pictures to help you visualize this. But everyone knows about the mercy seat. Everyone knows about the Ark of the Covenant.
All right.
Everyone knows about the cherubim, how they covered the Ark of the Covenant and how they, on their wings, held up the mercy seat. Well, what was going on with that was the Lord coming into the temple. And as he came into the temple, Ezekiel said that he saw a vision, and in his vision he saw that there was a likeness of a man.
Yes.
Now, I used to think in the Holy Ghost temple, in the Holy Ghost world, that meant that now we've gotten so spiritual that you can get to the place where you can start seeing God. But actually, this vision from Ezekiel was not to portray any of that. It was to portray that God was making a visitation to Israel in order to shake them up from doing the defaming that they were doing. So all of a sudden, Ezekiel gets this vision and he sees that the likeness of a man's come. And then all of a sudden, he says he sees the cherubim. And the cherubim reveals all of a sudden the smoke. And the smoke lifted from the top, from the waistline. And he said he saw from the waistline up. He said he saw the glory as it was in amber. And then he said from the waistline down, he saw the other glory as in amber. But then he said he looked again and behold, a hand. It was the hand as of a man. And what you need to understand, what he saw there is, he saw that now that the glorious chariot, the throne of God, came into the temple. And when it came into the temple, it was in the Holy of Holies. And that Holy of Holies is where God met his people. And so what we need to understand is what was going on is the Lord was coming there, which is the Son of Man, which was the Word, which was now, as we know it, as Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Well, he came into the temple, and as you saw this vision, his hand appeared. And then the next thing you saw in this vision, you seen that his feet appeared. And that is to tell you that this man that appeared, he stepped off of the throne. And he was walking into the Holy of Holies. And then it tells us with this vision that he continued to walk. And he walked through the temple, which is the three compartments. And we know it's the Holy of Holies, it's the holies in the court of the congregation. Well, let's also notice and remember now that it is set up that is in the direction of the west. So the Lord came in the west part of the temple, and he was walking from the west to the east. I don't think y'all get the picture here. Well, if you do, I want you to understand what was going on is it was a depiction of the Lord coming into the place where he had set up for his worship, and that now, since that is the case of them defaming the place, and bringing in idolatry, he wanted us to know that he was leaving that place. So yeah, he left that place. And that's what he wanted to portray to us, and he was given the signs and he gave the vision to Ezekiel. Now I want you to take a look. Let's take a look at this, because you got to see from the scriptural standpoint what I'm saying. In the beginning we saw in Ezekiel, bear with me as I turn these pages a bit.
Reference, chapter.
I'm going to get you there in a second. In Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 1. Okay, you ready?
Ready.
Now it came to pass in the 13th year, in the 4th month, in the 5th day of the month, I was among the captives by the river Shebar. Now Shebar is Mesopotamia, and it is also known as Babylon. That the heavens were opened, and he said, I saw a vision. Now we saw this vision, and we found out that this is the commission for Ezekiel. And then it comes on the next one I'm going to say, and the word of the Lord came expressly unto Ezekiel, unto him, the priest, who was a priest, that in the land of Chaldees by the river Shebar, the hand of Yahweh was upon him, and I looked, and behold, a whirlwind come out of the north, a great cloud and fire folding itself, with a brightness was about it, and out the midst thereof the color of amber, out of the midst of the fire. Also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of the living four creatures. That's Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 3 through 5. I wanted you to see what was going on here with the chariots and stuff that came into the temple. So then when you see that, all of a sudden you find out that we see these cherubim. I don't know how much you may have looked at this, but let's look at the cherubim for a minute. The cherubim are given the what you might say, the idea of being able to overlook the affairs of the earth. You may not have heard of this before, but there is the divine council. And the divine council, there is things that set up in hierarchyship that you should be aware of. Well, with these cherubim, we are also told that they have 4 faces. 4 faces. One is the face of a man. And the next one is the face of an ox. And the next one is the face of an eagle. And the other one is the face of a lion. Notice, man first, who is the supreme control of all the earth affairs. Then if you have the lion's control of the beast community, right? Then you have the ox. The ox is in the highest order for that type of animal. And then you have the eagle, which is now the one that controls or has the kingship over the fowls of the air. So now you see why he has these 4 faces. When I was going to the Pentecostal church, I was lost on this idea because, so how can a creature be so beautiful that's doing these 4 faces and doing this type of thing as you mentioned here? But now, since I understand what these guys are representing, now I don't be so to the point of saying I don't understand the logic of that, and it don't seem right to me, and it don't seem like it be all that beautiful. But it is beautiful because they are given the control or to watch over the affairs of the earth. So the affairs of man, the affairs of the lion kingdom, the affairs of the fowls of the air, and the affairs of the oxen. You see? So that's what these cherubims were supposed to be doing. So now that we come to that establishing of the fact of that, when you read the book of Ezekiel, it may not be so obstinate to you to the fact of what you're reading. So now let's go to the fact of what was going on here. So we see these animals, these cherubim, and they're bearing up the throne. And they're bearing up the throne, and they're flying into the Holy of Holies. And when they're flying into the Holy of Holies, they stop right there. And now the glory of God is filling the temple. And with that idea of it filling the temple, now we get the understanding of why God gave them the tabernacle in the first place. Now let's understand why it happened that way. Don't you remember that man shall not live by bread alone? Well, that is also, he said, and Jesus said it again, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God, right? And to him only shall you give divine service. So these cherubim is given divine service. And that's what the Lord had done with Israel. Placed them into the position where they will be able to do and perform divine service.
Right.
You see? So now we understand this principle. Let's understand why all of a sudden the visitation happens. The visitation happens again because of what happens. Y'all need to forgive me, I'm still used to being able to read when I was younger. I got to take my glasses on and off. So we find out that the divine service, and what happened here is, let's take a look at Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 1. It came to pass in the year, in the 6th month, in the 5th day of the month, that I sat in my house, and the elders of Judah sat before me this time, and the hand of the Elohim fell upon me. And then verse 2. And I beheld, lo, the likeness of the appearance of fire, and that appearance of his loins from downward, the fire, and the appearance of his loins upward, the appearance of brightness of the color amber. Okay? So that's what I was telling you. All of a sudden, he stepped off the throne, and he beheld right here, up, amber. Right here, down, amber. So it's telling you that the Lord is now walking off of his throne into the Holy of Holies to do a visitation. So then we find out from that what he's trying to do is in Ezekiel chapter 8, verse 3 again, he said, they went all the way to the inner court where the east gate was. Okay? He said, and what they did is the Lord told them, they set up a gate of jealousy there. And when they set up this gate of jealousy, he wanted you to know something. In verse 5 in chapter 8, then he said unto me, Son of man, lift up your eyes now the way toward the north. And so lifted up my eyes toward the way of the north, and behold, the north gate of the altar, this image of jealousy. It's not God's image, it's the image that the Jews put in there. Yeah, the idolatry part of it. So he said, I want you to take a look at that, because that's what they did. They put this image in here, and it's an image of jealousy. So now they're worshiping, false gods, right in God's house. So then, let's go on for a little bit more abomination. In verse 6 of chapter 8, and he said right here, he furthermore said unto me, Son of man, see you what they do? Listen to that. Son of man, see you what they do? Even the great abomination the house of Israel commits here, that I should go far off from my sanctuary. You see? So he's getting provoked to jealousy that he's saying, I'm going to leave. So, in short, in essence, I wanted you to see these first small verses that you can see why we're doing what we're doing. We're having service away from the church venue because God doesn't dwell there anymore. And you see it from Ezekiel, and it was a prophecy to Ezekiel, and that's to tell you that that's exactly what God did. He left the temple. Now you can read it in the book of Acts, where Stephen said it. God doesn't dwell in the temples made by hands.
Right.
Is it ignored? Is it forgotten with the world today? Which one is it? It bewildered me for several days, several months. Pondered. Sometimes I even forgot about it a while. But to the fact of the matter, from me looking at these scriptures now, I see what was the whole idea. That we need to not be involved in that because God's not in the churches.
Nope.
Tough statement, huh? Well, there's the scripture right there in the book of Ezekiel, and then in the book of Acts, spoken by two of the patriarchs, Stephen and also Paul in the 17th chapter of the book of Acts.
Right.
God doesn't dwell in temples made by hands, least happily he should get or need help from any of us.
Right.
He doesn't need it. So now I wanted you to see that, because what happened later, what happened later on in the book of John, we see that Jesus continued his venue. And he said that he wanted you to see this venue. But before I go there, let me tell you a little bit more groundwork. What took place when God left the temple, in the book of Ezekiel, it also says that he left out the east gate. And then he went to the Mount of Olives. And then it shows you in the vision, again in Ezekiel 11th chapter and the 10th verse, it tells you that the glory of the Lord ascended. Y'all remember that? Remember in the book of Acts? Ye men of Galilee, why stand ye here gazing for the same Jesus that what? Descended, that left, will also ascend. He will also come back the same way. Remember? Well, guess where that was? The Mount of Olives. Did you also notice that when Ezekiel saw this prophecy on the Mount of Olives, that something took place with the glory leaving? It also refers to when Jesus comes, he also gets crucified where? Y'all got it? You see? Yeah. So if he got crucified on the Mount of Olives, you saw God in personage and figurage coming through the temple, leaving the east gate, being crucified, and now on the Mount of Olives he ascends. Does that prove to you that God's not in temples? There's the proof right there. God's not in temples. Pay attention. Please pay attention, because the scriptures will show you that the venue of the church world is not the venue of the scriptures.
Right.
So as I said, Jesus came and he walked on the earth and he performed that prophecy in personage. Then let's also remember he fulfilled that personage, that prophecy and personage in the book of John. I think you might have a problem in believing me. So let's go to John chapter 20. And I'm going to go to 20 verse 21, and I'm going to read down to 22. Then said Jesus to them again, peace be unto you, as my Father hath sent to me. As my Father has sent me, even so I send you. Now in verse 22, and when he had said this, he breathed on them, and saith unto them, receive the Holy Spirit. So I wanted you to see that, because it's Jesus fulfilling the statement of what he's saying about the temple. Is Jesus fulfilling the saying of what God prophesied in the book of Ezekiel, the 36th chapter? He said that he will take away their stony hearts and give them a heart of flesh. And he will put his spirit in them, and they will keep his commandments and keep his statutes. And they will be my people, and I will be their God.
All right.
All right? So what that's telling you is that now he's going to dwell in the body of human beings. So therefore, God's dwelling in temples that's not made by hands. So now you and I are little stones. Now you and I are little stones. He started it with the Jewish nation right there in the book of John. He breathed on them, and then they are becoming living stones of the temple made up of human beings. So I wanted you to see this because you can now feel and rest assured that you are scriptural with what you're doing as far as not being involved in the church. Because the church is not the venue that God's working through. So now we get the understanding of that. So now we see how it all becomes to fit together. So Jesus talks to Peter, and he tells Peter, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter says, "Thou art Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus tells him, "You're blessed because flesh and blood does not reveal this to you." Right?
Right.
So, but he said, "And upon this rock," don't get it mixed up. Jesus was talking about himself. "Upon this rock, I will build my church." So do you see the venue now? Human beings built on the rock of Jesus Christ, a human being now becoming the temples. Now you get the idea of why he said, "Where two of you are gathered together in my name." Remember that? He said, "Where two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them." Now you got to understand that premises. What he's saying is, now if two or three of you, you got a dwelling place for him to come and to worship with you. So you are the stones. And you three, you two that's gathered together, now he comes as if is in the temple, which you are the temple. You see? So that's the whole idea. I wanted you to understand this. And then Paul picks it up and tells us that, "Know ye not that your body is the temple of God?" You see? You get it now? So now it wants you to understand that it's all doing and being done spiritually.
Yes.
No more physical churches or buildings being made.
Right.
For this to be done is the venue that is all going to be done spiritually. And then we found out again in Paul's writings in the book of Ephesians chapter 2. I love how Paul puts that. (19) all the way to 22. Chapter 2. "Now, therefore, ye are no more strangers and foreigners, but fellow citizens with the saints and of the household of God." Verse 20. "Are built upon the foundation of the apostles, the prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone." Verse 21, "In whom all the building fitly framed, joined together unto a holy" what?
Temple.
One more time with that verse. In whom all the building fitly framed together groweth unto a holy
Temple.
temple in the Lord, in whom ye are all built together for what, y'all?
Habitation.
Of God through the Spirit. So here we go. We're together right now.
Yep.
We're all the stones, and now God is what? In the midst of us. Now the beauty of it is, if you don't miss it, if you miss this, I want you to also see when Jesus met the woman at the well, and when he met her at the well, she said, we worship here, and we do it here, and we worship. And Jesus told her, woman, you worship, you know not what, for the hour is coming in, it shall be that they which, what y'all doing right now? I walk away. I walk away with that one. What y'all doing? What y'all doing? Jesus said, they which worship him the day will come when they which worship him, look at us,
Right.
shall worship him.
In spirit.
Spirit.
Thank y'all. And that's what we're doing right now.